Yeah, I know, it's another episode about Justin Fields, and I get it. But it's a really, really, really pivotal moment, I think, for this franchise to be able to identify and secure, or not, the player they'll be employing at their most important position. Good morning to you. Good Friday morning. I'm Dejan Kovacevic of DK Pittsburgh Sports. Not at all apologizing for today's subject matter on Daily Shot of Steelers, which, by the way, makes it to you bright and early every weekday morning if you happen to be into hockey and or baseball. I also offer daily shots of Penguins and Pirates that I hope you'll check out. Monday opens the NFL's legal tampering period. Mondays, when teams can contact whoever fits into this category, and Fields happens to be one of the most prominent players in the league in there, and they can do so without cheating. They can do so without circumventing anything. Omar Khan had said in Indianapolis, the scouting combine a few days ago, that he'd rather get Fields signed before he hits the open market, and that basically is the open market. But it's getting kind of dark outside in that regard. So what I want to do today is offer some background as opposed to the usual pounding on the desk for the team to get this done. That might help explain why the situation's gotten to where it is, as well as why it's not necessarily alarming. And I'm going to do that principally from the perspective of the agent. I have spent a lot of my professional career communicating with agents, most of those in Major League Baseball, but also in the other two sports, football and hockey. And the one thing that I've learned, maybe above all else, is that agents are way more different, meaning from each other, than you might think. There's always going to be the Jerry Maguire stereotype, the super slick screamers and shouters who are looking for every penny they can get. And you know what? There are plenty of those. They didn't exactly misfire in the characterizations in that movie. There are also the crusaders, the ones who feel like they're in control of the game, that they're in command of the future of the business of the sport, who see themselves as pioneers, who can even envision themselves someday being elected to the various halls of fame of these sports. And no, I'm not kidding about any of this. And then you've also got the ones who are just genuinely good guys who represent their clients' best interests through thick and thin, whether they're hurt and have had major setbacks, or they've been buried in the minor leagues, or they're stuck on the couch, as often happens in the NFL. And there are others, but let's just stick with those three right now. The representation for Justin Fields is David Mulugheta. And if you had to find a comparable for him, or you had to stick him in one of these categories that I just put forth, it's somewhere between 1 and 2. He wants every penny, and he sees himself as being that guy who will fight for your every penny, sometimes even against your wishes. And my goodness, I can't even tell you how many times I've come across stories like that, where the agents become way more worried about what other agents, and for that matter, people inside the Players Association or the union, will say about them, as opposed to what it is that their client wants. See, the one thing that agents don't like, with very few exceptions in my experience, is when a player becomes super attached to a team or his teammates or his city. You know, the stuff that they actually tell us on a daily basis and for the most part live out. Agents hate that stuff because that stuff costs them money. So what agents will do is they will show their players. They will actually create, because they have this kind of cash, video presentations, PowerPoints, to demonstrate the amount of money that they're leaving on the table, not for themselves, but for their future generations. You're such a terrible person, you athlete, that you are taking this money out of your child's mouth. And all because what? You like to watch when they wave the yellow towels? Give me a break. It's that kind of stuff. And they're very good at what they do in terms of making that case. They really are. I've heard stories like that for years. And this is how, by the way, a Le'Veon Bell can go completely wrong, in case you haven't already been thinking about him throughout this segment. Because his agent, who was not at all good at what he does, was at least really good on selling Lev on some really bad concepts. He wanted to be that agent who got running backs to be paid doubly, meaning pay him as a running back and as a wide receiver, because he's such an epic talent, he can also catch passes, as if this hadn't been done before. The Steelers still came back with an offer of $14 million a year, which would still, by the way, be a really, really, really good offer for a running back all these years later. And Lev, who had no issues with his teammates or his team or the coaches, and certainly not Mike Tomlin, he bought into this. And it ended up costing him not only the well-documented tens of millions, but it cost him his career trajectory. Think about it. He was playing with the most explosive offense in the league, and he could have continued doing so, and he could have run up some unreal numbers, and he could have been considered for Canton. And that is not an overstatement, because that group was capable of anything. They could exhale and produce 30 points in a game. These people are very influential, and they're also very motivated by nature, think about it, by money. So if you're Mulugeta and you have a standard practice of advising your clients to test free agency, to make sure to hear every offer, and Fields, who's a smart kid, chose this as his agent and knew of his reputation, then everything that's happened so far is what's to be expected. Now, all that said, from the exact opposite side of this figurative table, the Steelers need to get aggressive. They need to get this done sooner rather than later. When we come back, J1Q. Luxembourg, Garbett, Kelly & George is a personal injury law firm in Western Pennsylvania that represents injured people in automobile accidents, workers' compensation cases, and medical malpractice claims. The attorneys at Luxembourg, Garbett, Kelly & George pride themselves in doing what they say they're going to do. It's important to them that when they make you a promise, they keep that promise. And this law firm has been keeping promises for over 80 years. Luxembourg, Garbett, Kelly & George has been AV rated. That's the highest rating a law firm can receive for legal ability and ethics. And the lawyers at the firm have been designated super lawyers, that's a real thing, for over 15 years. Rare combination there. Luxembourg, Garbett, Kelly & George has offices in Cranberry, Newcastle, Beaver Falls, Butler, and Elwood City. Learn more about them at lgkg.com or by calling 888-842-5454. Again, that's 888-842-5454. Today's J1Q comes from a spirited Victory Asher who asks, DK, do you think the Browns will try and sign Justin Fields out from under the Steelers? My opinion is I think they will. All capital letters from Victory. Under Cleveland's current quarterback situation, they can afford, to sign Justin without breaking the bank. Justin, in my opinion, is better than any quarterback coming out of this year's draft. I'm certain that Kevin Stefanski could find multiple ways to utilize his skill sets and use their draft capital to fill another positional need. See, I'm glad this is coming up. First off, Victory, the simple answer is no. I don't think the Browns are going to sign Fields. Your question was actually, will they try and sign him? My answer to that would be, I don't care. Because the natural follow-up to my opening segment should be that the player still has that call. The player is the one at the end who's in charge. More so than his agent, believe it or not, more so than the team. When it comes to settings like this, anyway, some players are going to be obviously more desperate for employment than others. But I want to call your attention here to another player in Cleveland who no longer wants to be there. You might have heard of him. Yeah, that guy. Myles Garrett wants to be traded out. The Browns have approached him more than once since he's made that statement, pleading with him. No, you can't. No, what do you? And he's saying, yeah, that's it. I've been here long enough. I now want to be somewhere else. Just yesterday, the news emerged out of Cincinnati. This one really kind of surprised me, that Trey Hendrickson wants out. Now, I can't imagine how frustrating it must be to be a really, 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 really good player in the National Football League, like Hendrickson clearly is, and to be perpetually surrounded by a whole lot of nothing because all of the money gets put onto the offensive side. You know, kind of the opposite situation that exists here in Pittsburgh. But you and I saw the Steelers go into Cincinnati and put up 44 points on those guys and render Hendrickson completely moot. Now, they turned that around. The Bengals did when they came to Pittsburgh, and Hendrickson, by the way, was terrific. But that's still got to be a rough ride. And so without having any sort of statistical data to support my case here, it does matter to players where they are playing. It can matter for very different reasons. It can matter for multiple reasons. It doesn't just have to be sentimentality. It can be fit. It can be scheme, something I haven't even brought up today until now. You hear more about scheme in football than you do in any other sport, meaning when it comes to players picking their teams. And it can also be about trust. I'm not 100% sure why Justin Fields latched on to the Steelers the way he did, but he did. And it was even before he got here. When he was with the Bears, he made it really clear where he wanted to go. Some of that, I'm sure, was his familiarity and something of a relationship that had been established with Mike Tomlin. But there's also the one thing that is never really easy for an athlete to say out loud to people like me, which is opportunity. Because if you say opportunity and there's already quarterbacks employed there, you sound like you're dumping on them and whatever. So you have to be cautious about that. But opportunity. So we can say that Fields is going to have, endless suitors if he gets into free agency. He's not. Most teams, out of the 32, have a quarterback, have someone they would consider to be a no-brainer QB1 heading into the summertime. There are probably about a half dozen, depending on how you would determine this sort of thing, maybe up to 10 that don't, or who'd have a young guy that they still want to see groomed some more. Okay, so what's that leave Fields with? And that's why the agent goes and talks to the Jets, because you have to do what the agents themselves refer to as developing a market for your client. If you're just dealing with one team, you're doing the client, in their eyes, a disservice. You have to develop, even create. Sometimes the less ethical ones will just manufacture a market. They'll make up interest, or they'll exaggerate interest. Just get this done, Just let's just get it done, right? I appreciate the question. I appreciate everybody listening to Daily Shot of Steelers. And we'll be back with another episode on Legal Tampering Monday.